So both countries are essentially preparing for war.
In 1970, Edwin Starr made the point very clear. War. Huh. What is it really good for? Absolutely nothing. Say it again. Sadly, leaders across the globe and throughout time made a point of trying to convince us that war is not only necessary, but something we always had to be prepared for. That it is somehow better to be a warrior in the garden than a gardener in a war. By now, we all know what's happening in the Middle East, and I think it's a very scary situation. It seems that the entire world is involved in one way or another, as we see countries preparing themselves for war, while other countries are picking sides, indicating that they are ready to participate. As Americans, it's really hard for us to really understand the horrors of war, as most of us have never lived through it occurring within our borders. The result is we haven't really had to think or worry about how to be prepared. That said, this doesn't make us immune from other things like terrorist attacks or natural disasters. Last week, as I watched the attacks unfold and heard on the ground reports from friends and family members, I tried to imagine what that must have been like. It made me really think about the various emergency situations we could face and how quickly would I be able to gather things together and get out the door. Here in the US, we tend to focus our prepping on life essentials like food, water, and things that go pew pew or bang or even boom. But in this video, I want us to spend a little time thinking about your financial go bag. And I think there are kind of two types of financial go bags you need to have. One is physical, tangible, and in your direct possession, and the other is this often overlooked digital gold bag. Before we go into what is actually in those bags, we need to talk a little about the macro and then zoom down into the micro, as the reasons for your go bags are going to shift depending on what country you live in and even the region within your country. The degradation of our global world really started in 2020 with that, you know what I'm talking about. But that situation really damaged a very delicate interconnected system of supply chains. Since then, we've seen the rise of the BRICS and de-dollarization and de-globalization. And as Leo Gans put it,
Now it's about alliances and who I can deal with that I trust.
and as our world continues to pull apart, we're starting to see how messy this process can be.
Deglobalization is always going to be more radical. There'll be more regional wars. You see war breaking out in Armenia and Azerbaijan, and so I think deglobalization is certainly going to be messy.
While my previous interview with Leor was prior to the situation going down in the Middle East, I want you to really listen to the clips from this interview that didn't make it into the original interview video, but his words are absolutely prophetic.
As we deglobalize, we'll see now we see problems in between Russia and the Ukraine. You will see more problems. You see the coups in the Sahel in Western Africa. Niger is just one example. There'll be more.
While here in the US, we are less likely to face regional wars, that doesn't mean we are immune from terrorist attacks, domestic and foreign, natural disasters, or general system failures, which is why we always need to be prepared. After all, there is something to be said about Robert De Niro's quote from Heat. Don't let yourself get attached to anything that you're not willing to walk out on in 30 seconds flat if you feel the heat around the corner. Instead of, quote, not being attached, it's about what would or could you walk away with in 30 seconds flat. With that, let's get into this idea of your financial go bag. First, if you're a stacker, you better have a good safe bolted down to a wall or a floor or something like that, period. Next, inside the safe, you need two fireproof document bags. One bag is for general information and documents like pink slips, birth certificates, wills, trust, etc. The second bag is for important financial items. This is where you want to keep your cash, your passport, emergency debit cards and credit cards, and don't forget a checkbook. Now, depending on your stack, you want to put a small percentage in that actual fireproof bag. And that's really going to get kind of tricky depending on the size of your stack, but let's just pick a nice, easy number of somewhere around 10 ounces of gold. And that's not to say you're going to leave the rest of your gold behind or your rest of your silver, but we're talking about a situation. Let's say you're not home and one of your kids or your significant other has to grab your financial gold bag. You don't want them really thinking about it in the moment. So 10 ounces is roughly 20 grand. And I think in that 20 grand or 10 ounces, you really want to have a mix of sizes. You don't want to have to break up or deal with a whole 1 ounce coin if you need to sell something smaller or barter or whatever you can think of in any kind of scenario. The type matters, I think, in this situation. And this is one of those times where I really will subscribe to having American coins is better. And American coins, because those are easily recognizable and people will feel far more comfortable with that. You want to make sure you have something that is universally accepted at all times. Now, when we start to talk about your silver, that's where things get a little tricky in my mind. Yes, it's valuable, but in a need to go situation, you really want to be quick, nimble, and light. And frankly, silver's not a great dense store of value. So, like the 10 ounces of gold is less than a pound worth of weight, but you're carrying about $20,000. For silver, the equivalent would be 800 ounces, which would weigh about 50 pounds. And don't even consider junk silver because that's even worse. So this is where I think you want to again go back to American coins or whatever country that you live in, the sovereign coin, and you want to have one tube of silver there. So that could be anywhere from 20 to 25 ounces, depending on where you live. But I think you want to have one tube in that bag as well. Again, you would potentially grab more, or if you have time, you can absolutely grab more. But I want you to also be prepared for a situation where you may not be home or someone else may have to grab it, or you may only have seconds. You want to at least be able to grab something and know that you've got a good base to work from. And so you do need a mix of gold in different sizes, all American coins or whatever country you're from. And then you need about a tube of silver. And anything else you can grab from your safe, that's just icing on the cake. But this is your bare minimum. And literally, this is the only reason why I have silver eagles in my possession. I only have about 30 ounces worth of silver eagles, and it's just for this particular situation. Again, obviously, if you have more time, you will grab everything you can. But right now, we're acting like Robert De Niro and thinking about what you can grab in 30 seconds in terms of your financials. I can't stress this enough because each person in your home is actually likely to be focused on grabbing items that they find value in. For example, Mrs. Stacker is absolutely going to be focused on grabbing the cats and irreplaceable items like photo albums and things like that. And while those things are important and irreplaceable, we all know money talks and money makes the world go around, and is what we need to live off of in a crisis. So like I said, there are many levels to being prepared for an emergency, and it definitely depends on the type of emergency. And there are a lot of great people on YouTube you can watch it if you really want to get deep into this. In the description, I'm going to provide a link to the FEMA Financial Toolkit, which goes into great detail about some of the additional items you may want to have prepared in your quote-unquote go bag. Finally, you also need to have a digital financial go bag. And this is where you have your documents in a digital form in some kind of cloud service. And they basically serve as your electronic copies of your things like birth certificates, deeds, pink slips, and important documents like that, wills, trusts. Ultimately, it doesn't matter if we're talking about having to flee our homes from war, violence, natural disaster, or even a home fire. Being prepared will make all the difference in the world. In a crisis, you don't want to be scrambling and thinking about what you need. You just want to be able to react and take quick action. I think it's important that we use this unfortunate tragedy of what's going on in the Middle East to remind us that you never know when you will actually have to bug out. And in the worst case scenario, you can at least keep your life together or start to put your life back together if you have your financial resources and to lean on. And that starts with having your financial go bag. In the comments, do you have a financial go bag? Did I forget to include something critical in the financial go bag? Or you can simply put an A+ in the comments so that everyone knows that you always stack smarter and never stop learning.